Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's me, ChipZ, and we're back reading One Piece once again. Been waiting all week for this shit, man. It's been a long week. It's been a rough week in some ways. Been a good week in other ways. But One Piece is like the soothing balm that that I put on after getting burnt all week long. No, that's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but that being said, I've been hotly anticipating this chapter. It feels like things are finally starting to come to a head in this arc a little bit. Like things have kind of been clearly building to this crescendo between Luffy and Kaido. Obviously there's a lot going on there that I'm sure it looks like we're just about to finally get into the meat of the Kaido Luffy confrontation. Last chapter sort of felt like we had been building up to this final showdown between these two juggernauts, right? And then Luffy goes gear fourth, which obviously shows that he's super serious. And Kaido is clearly he's pulling out all kinds of crazy moves. He's gone homicidal. He's gone into a homicidal rage. Makes a funny face. You'll love to see it. What a funny guy. But the end of last chapter was really interesting. I think it threw a lot of people for a loop, me included. And I have some thoughts, and I have some predictions for what we might experience in this chapter. The only thing the only thing I've seen of this chapter so far is the cover page, the new cover arc. That's the only thing I've seen. Haven't got into the chapter yet at all. I'm reading on Kubari, but I do have TCB pulled up just in case there's some weird translation shit that needs to be decoded with a different translation, just a backup translation in case we need to refer to something. But so last chapter we actually finally started getting the meat of the Luffy Kaido confrontation. They're trading blows, going blow for blow, toe for toe, right? Luffy hits him with his fucking snake man punches that he used to fuck up Katakuri. Kaido pulls out his own observation haki and turns into a dragon, eats him, and then basically shoots him down, takes a bite of gum, as some people said last time, which was pretty funny. Shoots him through Onigashima, which was fucking awesome. That was so sick. Luffy, goes bound man, goes back up, hits him with a King Kong gun, which we hadn't seen him do, I think, since Dressrosa. So Luffy's pulling out all the stops. He's like, this is all or nothing. I'm using everything I got right now. And it looks like him and Kaido were about to have their they're about to use their finishing blows on each other, right? And right when that happens, we have our CP0 member, the masked weird man who always looks like he has a single tear going down his face because of his weird character design. He gets stabbed by Drake, then immediately hucks Drake out of being able to do anything important. Great job there, Drake. way to job again. So Drake jobs. CP0 man is on the prowl. He's been given the order to take down Luffy. He hops on Luffy's back, which distracts Luffy, breaks his focus long enough for Kaido to unwittingly hit him with his strongest attack yet. And Luffy just kind of fucking ragdolls into the fucking ground. And Kaido is looking distressed. And we see that he flashes back to the time when he was fighting Odin. He'd finally met his match. He'd finally met someone who could really challenge him in a 1v1 fight. Someone who could wound him, give him a big scar. And he's finally back then. I think a lot of people assume that back then that Odin slashing Kaido must have meant Odin's gonna win. Odin is about to kill Kaido. I think what we've learned from this long, drawn-out raid is that move wasn't going to kill Kaido. It would be the first in many blows of a long, drawn-out grudge match between the two guys. Because Kaido, he's an endurance fighter, man. He can, he can go for days, man. He's a beast. He can take a million cuts and keep on kicking. So, it's interesting to see that, that he remembers back to the Odin fight, and he's like, dude, Odin was one of those guys, one of those 1 in a million guys who actually could have given me a fucking run for my money. And then that fucking bitch, that Kurozumi bitch, fucking cucked me out of a super cool duel that I've always wanted with a super strong opponent. right? He wants, like, Kaido wants an impactful death. Like, that's my theory anyway. That's what I've come to understand based on the fact that he idolizes people like Roger and Whitebeard, and he's like, they did it right. You samurai, Odin, you guys do it right. You die and you impart your will onto others. I want a super impactful death that's going to leave a mark on the rest of the world, just like Whitebeard and Roger did. So I think it's pretty clear that, like, Kaido is after inherited will. That's like what he wants. He wants his will to be inherited, even though we don't exactly know what his will is. It's to change the world or something. That's really all we know, right? That being said, what's interesting now is Kaido just was cucked out of another grudge match between another super capable person in Luffy by CP0. So what I think is going to happen in this chapter, as someone who hasn't read anything yet, is that we're going to start, and this is like my prediction, like what I expect, like kind of what I think we might see. Like, it's not like, you know, this isn't set in stone, obviously, but it's just, you know, it's what I think we might see in this chapter. So essentially, you know, Kaido, what I'm expecting us to get, actually, is the beginning, potentially the whole thing. Like, I want to see the beginning of the Rocks flashback in this chapter, and I think we might see it for these reasons, right? So Kaido clearly joined the Rocks' crew, most likely, and this is just like my opinion, obviously, but I think there's a case to be made that he probably idolized the strongest guy at the time, back then, who was Rocks. And we know Kaido was just like a 15-year-old little scamp. You know, he was the Buggy and Shanks of Rocks' crew, apparently. That's what we've been led to believe, anyway. So what I expect to see is, you know, kind of see Kaido maybe, like, just fucking crack that CP0 guy over the skull with his fucking bat, send that guy into the fucking moon, and then just, like, lament, have, like, a fucking cry, have a fucking brood fest over the fact that he has just defeated the one person in, like, 20 years who's actually given him, like, a real run for his money, who was, like, looking like someone who could actually potentially defeat him. And I think we're going to start to see a flashback to the Rocks Pirates and see how Kaido was also potentially cucked out of a confrontation with Rocks, which I think is what maybe he wanted as a kid, was to defeat the strongest man, become the strongest, defeat the strongest at the time, and then maybe, like, see more about, like, how he got these ideals around wanting, like, a death that would impact the world, and maybe seeing how Rocks didn't really get that because the world sort of forgot about Rocks, and, like, how, like, maybe Kaido saw that as a bit of an injustice and he wants to right the wrongs or something. I don't know. These are just my thoughts based on having limited information because I haven't read the chapter yet, but we're about to get into it. So without further ado, enough theorizing. Let's actually get into chapter 1043, and it's called We Die Together. So let's get into it. All right, so we're starting with the cover page. Continuing with this cover arc about the Vinsmokes being captured in Whole Cake Island, we see the two best Charlotte family members, Brule, base Brule, and obviously fucking Oven, the Chad, honestly, like, the big boss of the Big Mom Pirates. People say, like, Katakuri's the one who will, take up the mantle of the Big Mom Pirates. Bro, Oven... listen, you put mochi in the oven, it's getting fucking melted, bro. Like, it doesn't, Oven is, by far, has, like, the best feats of the Big Mom Pirates, besides maybe Big Mom herself. The dude boiled the ocean. He killed, like, the entire Fishman crew just by fucking, like, looking at them, just, like, standing near them and being mad. They all, like, were just like, oh god, it's too hot, we can't deal with it. This man is a monster. I love him. But anyway, so what's happening with these guys? It looks like they're taking the Vinsmoke book with the Vinsmokes in it back to Whole Cake Chateau, the fallen Whole Cake Chateau. Sour Lemon says, Oven is low-key the MVP of Mommy Boys. Dude, yeah, he is a badass. Oven really, like, this is why I think a lot of people think the Charlotte family was more impressive than the Kaido Pirates, and it's because guys who, like, aren't even, like, sweet commanders, like, Oven, I guess you can maybe... He's maybe comparable to, like, one of the Flying Six, but, like, the thing is, Big Mom has, like 40 people in her team who are, like, comparable to the Flying Six. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's, like, we saw, like, Amande, Daifuku, fucking Prospero, who's, like, basically just a fourth she basically has like 4 people who are like Jack level, like right off the bat, and and then there's obviously like, all kinds of badasses in her crew. It's just, it's a stacked crew. They're really cool. And they're all have like such cool powers and such cool character designs and dynamics. Montdour, the book boy, the cream man, the cum man. I forget his name. The guy who, the whipped cream dude. Anyway, moving on. So arriving at Whole Cake Island. So that is the bookend of that. So we can go ahead and move on to the chapter proper. Okay, so last we left our hero, he had a big arm from jerking off too much with his right hand, as we can see. Jesus Christ, Luffy, you need to fucking share the load on that. Tug a little with the left, make that shit even. And Kaido is smacking him down, and Kaido looks real sad. He's like, oh no. That is the face of someone who has walked in on someone fucking his daughter, and or something like that. Anyway, Sour says, I think it's more than that the Flying Six and All-Stars are the only threatening members of Kaido's crew. Whereas for Big Mom, it's, as you said, like 30 people. Yeah, Big Mom has like an innumerable number of like super-powered, beasts in her crew, right? Super-powered, like, absolute units who can just like wreck shop. Big Mom has technically been around a lot longer than Kaido, so it would make sense that like even if she maybe isn't as strong as Kaido in a one-on-one, at which, that's arguable. Like, you could argue either way on that one. It would make sense that her crew is, like, more established, because she's just been around longer. Kaido uses, like, weapons and shit. Like, he, like, artificial devil fruits and, like, gas weapons and things that turn people into demons. Kaido will do, like, whatever it takes to win. Big Mom's, like, proper, She's kind of, like, aristocracy. She is, like, kind of doing things the old way of, like, yeah, we're gonna, like, gain power through, like, political influence. Where Kaido's, like, we're just gonna fucking, like, own all this shit and, like, buy weapons from, like, the high, and sell weapons to the highest dealer and stuff like that. Like, he's just kind of like doing, like, he's fast tracking his success, where Big Mom's kind of like been building it up over like generations, basically. Sour also says Kaido has as many people to work with as Luffy. Exactly. Yeah, Kaido's crew is much more equivalent to Luffy, which I actually think is going to be a plot point, because they're clearly drawing some comparisons between Luffy and Kaido up until this point. And Sour says, but no friends. Yeah, Kaido, I mean, he has like King. I guess King is his friend. Sasaki wanted to drink with Kaido. That's a friendly thing to do. Anyway, moving on. All right, so Kaido is looking real depressed, real fucking shook by this situation of Luffy getting blown the fuck out. Someone yells, I don't know if that's Luffy yelling or Kaido yelling. Looks like it might be Luffy. Luffy is coughing up blood. His eyes have gone white. Kaido his hands are like, he's got like the fucking blood vessel on his hands, which I assume means he's very angry about this turn of events. And then we see this man, the man with the scarf. This guy, he's been used in kind of a weird way this arc, because like he's like one-shot Drake, then Drake one-shot him back. Like, a lot of the CP0 stuff has kind of been happening in the background, so it feels like a little underwhelming. This is the first time that it's like actually like really mattered that CP0 is here to like the events. Like, we obviously knew that Drake and CP0 knowing about each other would like spark things to come in future arcs, like, conflicts between, the good side of the Marines, like the good people in the Marines, and the world government, and like, their dealings. And it would like, obviously that's going to be a conflict that comes down the line. But in terms of this arc, this is like the most relevant they've been by far. Sour says, Luffy has friends beyond his crew is what I meant. Oh, yeah, that too. Luffy makes allies wherever he goes. That's why he is a special, special boy. And Kaido seems to just beat up people wherever he goes and integrates them into his crew via that method, which is different from Luffy. Like, Luffy earns people's trust. Kaido just kind of, I don't know, fucks around. People fuck around with Kaido and they find out, basically. Some of the CP0 stuff feels unclear because you only get to see the conclusions rather than the lead-up. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel as well. Like, why didn't we get, like, at least, like, a couple pages of, like, a Drake versus this guy conflict? Like, I don't know, like, even if you end up making Drake lose, like, I'm fine with that. Just, like, I don't know, dude, Drake's a supernova. He should have more to do than just job. You know what I'm saying? I know this conflict between Drake and this guy are going to lead to, like, further ramifications down the line, and I'm looking forward to see that, but, like, at this point, like, I've been a huge Drake defender because I've been so excited for this conflict that, like, and this, like, ideological battle between, like, personal justice and like, you know, kind of like, you know, corrupt justice that like kind of like is willing to do business with like tyrants and stuff like that to gain like weapons for war profiteering and shit of that nature, right? So like I've been looking forward to this because this is an aspect of One Piece that I've really liked and been really interested in for a while, but now it just feels like, I don't know, maybe Drake will come back again and kill this man again, but I don't know. I think at this point Kaido's just gonna kill this man, so I mean we'll just have to wait and see. Lemon says, I actually think this is one of the better instances of the unclarity, but like the Izo CP0 fight wasn't seen. Yeah, the Izo stuff was interesting, because Izo somehow accomplished more than Drake accomplished, even though he's not as major of a, I would argue, like, if you're a supernova, you have, like, more narrative weight on your back, because you're a rival for, not necessarily the Pirate King, but you've been, like, Oda has highlighted the supernova as, like, big major players in the world. And, like, Izo is also a major player. He's a Red Scabbard, and he was part of Whitebeard's crew, so he has a lot of, you know, gusto. He has a lot of, like, you know, impact behind him. You expect him to be strong. So, like, I like that he did something like take out one of the members of CP0, but in comparison, Drake looks so ineffectual, which is kind of my issue. But it's not a huge issue. It's not the end of the world. I'm looking forward to see what happens here, and I am going to keep reading. I'll get to your next comment in just a moment. I just want to move forward a little bit in the chapter. But I'll read it in just a sec. Okay, cool. So this man is looking kind of broody. We'll see what happens with him in just a moment. Okay, so Kaido, Pants. Is this another member of CP0? Who is this guy? Because no, this is a different guy. Because the guy who got taken down was making the duck lips face. He was like, that's the guy who got shot in the chest by Izo, so that guy's down. This man, I just forgot that there was another guy around the whole time. I completely forgot about that. So Luffy exhales, he's, you know, becoming a balloon man, he's floating around. Kaido looks up, he's got his eyes shaded over, and Momonosuke is pulling the island backwards, and he says, what? Luffy's voice, it's gone. And then what happens next? Oh shit, okay. So at this point, Luffy falls down to the ground dead. He is actually dead this time, for real. So Luffy and Zoro both died in this arc. No one would have predicted that, but here it is, happening once again. Sour says, in this case, it gives more tension. Yeah, I agree. I think this is like an interesting turn of events, because like I didn't expect this. Like, you know, Moore's just going to be like, this is proof that the raid is going to fail. I don't think that's what this is. I think Luffy will probably get back up. We'll see, obviously. But, yeah, so this is, you know, but this is a really interesting turn of events, and this is a really interesting way of integrating CP0 into this arc in a way that feels impactful and important, right? And it's also going to characterize Kaido more, which is, you know, I'm all for. Like, I'm all for to see how Kaido deals with the situation. And then Sour says, I also cannot distinguish the CP0 members. Yeah. Yeah, they're not quite as identifiable as the CP9 members because we actually spent time with those guys. These guys just are character designs. Nothing really more than that. We haven't seen anything more about them than that, except for maybe this masked man, and maybe we'll see more of him here. Okay, so Luffy falls down. Kaido is about to cry. He looks very sad. Luffy is out. Skull Dome, rooftop battle. Victor, Kaido, King of the Beast. Dude. Fucking Word of God text. Word of God text. Kaido won the fight. That's kind of wild. That is a wild way to, like, end this sequence, to be honest. I did not expect it to go that way. But I am very interested to see the fallout of these events. So, okay, Kaido looks at this man. He says, do you know what you've done? And then this man just kind of tips his fedora. He does a fedora tip. Kaido is about to kill him, which is what I expected, you know, because Kaido got cucked out of his honorable duel, his, you know, ultimate slugfest with a strong opponent. Kaido's about to destroy this man. He's going to turn him into butter. He's going to turn him into jam. Oh, look at that. So you just see the explosion. I don't think this man is making it out alive. If you know how Hawkins predicted that there would be one person who had like basically like a 0% chance of survival, we all thought it was Drake. I think it's this guy. I think this guy's a dead man. But we'll just have to see. Kaido has failed to kill a lot of people this arc, so we'll just have to see if he's successful here or not. Okay, so Kaido smashes this boy. Crack, big crack. Everyone's like, whoa, there's no end to it. And then this other CP0 guy's like tips his fedora to his friend who sacrificed his life to accomplish his mission. Honestly, kind of based of this dude to like, he knew that there was no way he was going to be able to step in between these two combatants and survive. And he predicted that, and he was like, do I really have to do that a couple chapters ago? He still did it. He took his fucking death like a champ. I gotta respect that. Sour says, they also all wear the same freaking mask. Yeah, it's a variation on the same mask. The one guy, the only CP0 member that's actually really cool is Stussy, in my opinion, because like we were introduced to her as like a deep undercover agent. Basically, she's like a CP0 agent, but she's working as like a red light district like leader. She's like the leader of like the red light district in this world, and like clearly uses that to like spy on people and get information and stuff. And she only whips out the she-gun when she's in a pinch, in a bind. But she keeps her facade, at least to what we've seen. And she's a cutie as well, which helps a lot to make her likable. But anyway, this man tips his fedora. Kawamatsu-san, the ceiling is coming down. So now that Luffy has just been destroyed, I'm wondering what will happen. Will Kaido take a little rest? Because he's clearly taken some damage. He's beat up. Or will someone stall for time? It's possible Kaido will maybe just like wait for Luffy to recover. That's what I predicted last time, like him doing like, because he could do like the Katakuri thing and like fucking smack himself in the face with his bat, but I don't see it going exactly the same way as Katakuri. I think it's going to be similar, but not exactly the same. But I could see Kaido just kind of like taking a rest, like doing a little bit of a cry, which he did when he first beat Luffy, like 40 chapters ago or something, and when he knocked him off the dome into the sea, is what I mean. And like, yeah, I could see Kaido doing a little bit of a cry and not, and kind of having maybe this beginning of a flashback. But I imagine, if Kaido still wants to accomplish his goal at this point, is it just going to be everyone versus Kaido? I guess we'll find out. That would be kind of interesting. We'll see though. So the ceiling's coming down. Someone's yelling for Kawamatsu. Kawamatsu says, "Thousands of our comrades are still in there. If only we weren't up in the sky. There's no water around here." So he's, he wants to do a water thing, so he can put out the fire, obviously. But there's no water around. "We can't do anything to quell these flames. Everyone, please find a way out. There is no honor in burning alive." What about Odin, man? He burned alive. What about your boy, Big Head, Raizo? He burned alive. That was pretty cool. Sour says, "Can't wait for someone to get back up when they are dead." Yes, it happens all the time. It's going to happen again. Bet on it. Okay, so Kawamatsu no longer thinks that Odin or Raizo are honorable. That's the book note for this one. Then they get blasted with something. Like there's a big blast. These guys get hit. Ooh-ah, huh? Some Mario-looking man looks up at him. What happens next? So Kaido has come down himself. So he is down there. That's not Momonosuke. That is Kaido. And he says, and everyone's like, "Kaido-san, or Kaido-sama, where is your leader? Make that brat Momonosuke declare his surrender." Where is your leader? Who is he talking to? Wait, what? "Where is your leader? Make that brat Momonosuke declare his surrender. Straw Hat Luffy is dead. If any of you still wish to fight, step forward now." Oh shit. So we really are going to see everyone versus Kaido, huh? That's interesting. Okay. So everyone's like, "Yeah, he's done it. It's a victory for Kaido-sama." It can't be. Young Straw Hat couldn't have, and like they're saying he couldn't have died. And then, wait. So, okay, I don't think Law's hearing the voice of all things. I think he's assuming, I think this is a, not a voice of all things, but rather a observation hockey thing. I think he's like, I can't sense his presence anymore. That must mean he's either dead or down. Straw Hat's voice has vanished, and Kid and Law are still chilling. And then Kid says, "Looks like we're kidding ourselves." I see what you did there, Kid. I see what you did there, dude. Good one. making a pun off of your own name. Pretty cool. All right, and then our doctor friend makes a doctor pun after that. He says, "This is a bitter pill to swallow. I've got nothing left." So these guys apparently have nothing left. We'll see if that's true. And then Chopper, "Wah, Luffy's been killed." Don't go out there, yo. Is that, yo? Is that, no, Yoi. So that's Marco. Don't go out there, Yoi. We can't let that oversized snake get away with lying like that. Big bro, Tama says. Luffy can't have lost. Nami's about to cry. He's not dead. It's impossible. He looks pretty dead. But we know he's not. Oh, okay, so now we're getting Marco. Yo, Marco versus Kaido. Maybe for like a second at least. Oh, so some still won't let their spirits break. And then, who's that who's saying, liar, I don't believe you? Is that Marco? Or maybe it's Nami who says that. Liar, I don't believe you. Oh, so this is all... Yeah, this arc has a lot... There's been like a running motif about like spirits breaking. Like Kaido breaks the spirits of pirate crews and like pirate captains who think they're going to be the best. Like, so that happened with Kid. When he dropped down on him, he, defeated him, sent his crew packing to, scattering them to the winds, broke their spirit. Clearly that's also something that's happened a couple times in this battle when he was like, I beat Luffy, Luffy's gone. Trying to break their spirit, Momo keeping their spirits up. The samurai we saw in Wano, their spirits were broken when they were in the prisoner mines, like even when after after Queen left and like all they had left was the bullets that would like the plague bullets. Luffy had to be like, yo, like your guys, like you like they just didn't like they were slaves and they didn't care anymore because their spirits were broken. And same thing that happened was Ashura Doji, like he saw all of his comrades die. He didn't think his friends were going to come back. His spirit broke. So spirits being broken is definitely like a big theme of this arc. So I'm actually really glad that that's kind of like being tied into like the main narrative now, as opposed to just being like set dressing. So this is really good. This is really cool. I like where this is going. So Kaido comes down. Marco says, get down. And I like that Marco's doing things, because Marco's cool. Obviously he can't beat Kaido, but he can stall him for a little bit because he's a tough boy. So he blocks Kaido's blast breath. Don't give up, and not until it's all over. And then Nami's crying. Onigashima will now land on the flower capital without delay. You'll find it. I won't be as soft as Orochi was. That's what Kaido says. And it looks like the samurai are all about to go up against this guy, which is going to be fucking epic, dude. Let's see. This country is just a giant weapons factory to me. I don't care if they're women or children. Everyone here is my slave. And that's another theme of the arc is, well, slavery. That's a theme of a lot of One Piece arcs, but there is an idea that, like, Kaido doesn't, like, recognize the humanity of the people of Wano, and essentially, like Luffy does, and that's kind of like the difference between the two. Like, Kaido will do whatever it takes to achieve whatever goal he is trying to do, become Pirate King, etc., and he will, stomp on anyone that gets in his way, basically, because he doesn't recognize them unless they're strong people, like Luffy, or the Scabbards, or Odin. You'll be free to drop dead after your bodies can't take any more work. That's how you'll live for the rest of your miserable lives. After all, I can always replace you when you're gone. Yeah, that's true. These people suck and are all replaceable, Kaido. I agree with you there. You choose to oppose me? Facing my wrath now should come as no surprise. This is what it means to lose in war. You gambled with your rights and dreams. Wow, okay. That's a pretty poignant line. I like that. And then this guy's like, please, no, spare my wife and child. And these guys are ready to, they're gearing up. This guy kind of looks like Odin almost, with a different haircut. These guys are all gearing up for a big battle. Bring me Momonosuke. This doesn't end until then. So he wants to kill that little boy. Classic Kaido. We got a chicken man. I wonder if that's Fortrix the chicken smile. That guy was kind of funny. Now's our chance. Get Kid and Law, take their heads. They're at the end of their rope. So they're looking pretty shook even by these mooks. So I do think that they are pretty, not as, they're not in good shape, these two. You may have beaten Big Mom, but Kaido-san is tougher than a fortress. I don't know what that means. But, okay. You never had a chance. And then looks like a kid guy comes into block and looks like this guy, what's this guy's name? Jean Bart. Jean Bart comes into block as well. Protect the captains, they say. Okay, next. This doesn't sound good. Let's go. So we got Nekomamushi and Carrot going in to help out as well. And then Nekomamushi says, meow, grr, as he does, because he's a cat. Castle interior basement. Nothing but flames everywhere. Cough, cough. Is there a way out? Look for an exit. And then looks like Kid and Law are trying to put something together. A little bit of a last front. So Kid, he's building his arm back up. He says, I'm fighting Trafalgar. Surrendering or letting him kill us are both out of the question. Damn, Straw Hat, yeah. Hoof, hoof. All right, Momo's pulling for Yamato. He's trying to, he's pulling hard for that one. And don't be absurd. What can I do against someone Luffy lost to? So looks like Yamato's trying to convince Momo to fight Kaido. And Momo does have control over Zunisha. So Momo technically could fight Kaido, realistically, with the help of Zunisha. So that would be kind of interesting. I am curious to see what'll happen with that. And Momo is 28 now. So even if Momo isn't like, I remember when Momo was initially aged up, it reminded me, a lot of people were comparing it to like the moment in Hunter x Hunter. Spoilers for... this is like a minor spoiler for Hunter x Hunter. I won't use any names. There was a character who uses Nen, which is a power system in that show, to age themselves up to a point where they're like, where if they had consistent growth until they were that age, they would have easily been able to defeat the opponent they were up against. And it comes at a big cost to themselves. But when Momo got aged up, I think a lot of people were comparing that moment in Hunter x Hunter to this thing with Momo. So I have been curious to see, like, could adult Momo, obviously can't beat Kaido. Luffy has to do that, I think. But it would be interesting to see like what Momo could accomplish in a situation like this, because Momo, there's a lot of importance on this man's head. Is Momo Joy Boy? Is it more likely he's Joy Boy than Luffy's Joy Boy? I don't know. We'll find out soon enough. Some people think so. I don't know. Okay. Don't be absurd. What can I do against someone Luffy lost to? You can fight until your last breath, is what Yamato tells him. Isn't that the way of the samurai? If not us, then who? Everyone else is at their limit. Yeah, these two are fresh. I mean, relatively fresh anyway. Like, Yamato got kind of beat up, but she's okay. Or they, or I don't know Yamato's pronouns, whatever. Yamato is fine. Yamato is mostly fine. They only had a little skirmish with Kanjuro's little fire guy who... Okay, let's talk about that for a second. The Kanjuro fire thing ended up getting like evaporated by Big Mom grabbing a bomb. That felt like, in hindsight, that whole subplot of Kanjuro being a weird fireman feels really like it was just there to pad the arc in a lot of ways. Like, I'm not normally someone who says that until like all the chips are down, but like, man, what the, unless it's going to come back and do something important, like, what the hell was the point of that? it feels, I mean, I guess to give Yamato something to do. While Luffy fought on the roof, which is fine, whatever. I'm not going to dwell on it. It's kind of lame, but whatever. Who cares? If not us, then who? Everyone else is at their limit. Even Kaido must be feeling it by now. Oh yeah, he's really feeling it, Mr. Krabs. That would just be throwing away more lives. It pains me to admit this, but Luffy's gone. Our only option is to yield. And Yamato says, I'm not letting that happen. They'll live and then what? They'll be slaves until the day they finally die from exhaustion. And this is another, like, recurring theme of the arc, kind of like the argument between like living to fight another day or like dying, like putting everything on the line, or at least being willing to put everything on the line for a better future, a brighter future today. That is definitely something that's kind of come up quite a bit in this arc, and it continues to come up. And it is interesting. It is interesting to see that that's like a lot of the recurring motifs of this arc are kind of coming back in this chapter, which is pretty interesting. Okay, so I'm not letting that happen. They'll live and then what? They'll be slaves until the day they finally die from exhaustion. In the end, surrendering won't save anyone. So they can't pull a neutral Jin. They can't pull a Boomy. They gotta give it all right now, because this is the best chance they've ever had. And they still technically have a little bit of a chance, even if it's a slim one. All the daimyo, and then, Momo, big wide eyes, he finally understands, like, he's not, is he still an Usopp? Is he still a coward? We'll see. And the thing is, I like that Oda's portrayed this idea that, like, because, like, when Usopp talked to Kinemon and Kiku, he's like, listen, you guys dying, like, you guys, like, just giving up and, like, wanting to die an honorable death, like, that was, stop it. Like, that's stupid. Like, right now, you should be doing everything you can to survive so you can, like, live to fight another day and live to continue to help Momonosuke and continue to like serve Wano and stuff and continue to, it's easier to, it's harder to, it's easier to die for your dreams and die for your lord and your duty than it is to live for it. That's, I think, what Usopp was saying. Like, I cling to life with snot running down my nose. So in that instance, Usopp was in the right. I think Oda was trying to say, like, no, that this is like, this theme is complicated. There are multiple sides to it. In that instance, Usopp was telling the samurai what they needed to hear, and Izo kind of backed that up and was like, yeah, Usopp's right. God, Usopp is right. Live to fight, live on, like, don't give up. Where now we're seeing kind of the flip side of that, where Momo is like, no, well, we can surrender and maybe we can survive. And Yamato's like, dude, I've lived under Kaido's rule for my entire life. This is not the salvation that you seek. This is not, like, this is a do or die situation. We cannot give up here. Like, we are so close. This is the best chance we'll ever get. We have to try. We have to give it our all, even if we die. And this is interesting. The theme of death and, like, the theme of, like, like, sacrifice is something that's come up a lot in this arc. So I'm interested to see it, like, kind of being brought full circle in this instance. All the daimyo that allowed Orochi to have his way went to their graves full of regret. Everything, so, like, Hyogoro, for instance, who didn't go to his grave, but you know what I'm saying. But, like, the people who she met in the cave, the people who kind of, like, worked with her and were friends with her and stuff like that. She knows that they regretted not fighting when they had the chance, not fighting with Odin until after Kaido had taken over, and they didn't really have the united front that they needed to take down Kaido. So, yeah, she makes a good point. Everything Wano endured for the past 20 years was for the sake of this battle. Yep. Even if surrender is our only option, I'd rather we die together. Damn. And then Yamato and Momo look at each other. They're about to have a big kiss. Some people ship that. I don't know, man. Momo is still mentally an 8-year-old. That would still technically be some pedophilia or something like that. But anyway, so these guys are fighting. Kaido is blowing everyone up, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool to see. Momo is literally carrying the arc on his back at the moment. Pretty cool. Pretty Chadley of him to do. I love that there's a scar on the dome now. There's a scar on the dome. The dome is turning into Zoro. And now Luffy, we cut back to Luffy. He's on the rooftop. And I guess Luffy is still, like, maybe he was unconscious, and maybe now he is regaining consciousness at long last. The smoke billows on the roof. It is a interesting scene. Luffy lays there, mostly dead. And then Zunisha says, Momonosuke. And Momonosuke says, huh? And then I think it's Zunisha again who says, I can hear it. And I can't tell if it's Zunisha talking or Luffy. We'll find out soon enough. It really takes me back. Whoa. Oh, no. Oh, no, guys. Oh, no. It really takes me back. What do you mean, Zunisha? I can hear the drums of liberation. Oh, God. I think I know what this is building to. This is the first time in 800 years. He is there, without a doubt. And then Momo says, who is? And we see Zunisha's sunken in eyes, the light glowing from them. He says, Joy Boy. And oh no, his face is becoming, oh no, he's becoming Joy Boy. He's becoming Soy Boy. No, he has returned. And he's turning into a Jello Boy. He's turning into a slime man. His fruit has awakened, and a quiet smile. His fruit hasn't awakened in, what? 800 years, 1,000 years, or whatever it was. The thing that Gorosei said, the reason they wanted CP0 to assassinate Straw Hat Luffy before it's too late. Now he's awakening his devil fruit. He's turning into a Jello Boy. He's turning into, maybe, and it's pronounced Nika, Nika in Japanese. Take that as you will. He has returned. Joy Boy. Interesting. Okay. All right, guys. I'll be honest. I was really hoping, because they said in so there's been a lot of hints throughout the arc. Like, there were reasons to believe. Obviously, I think like the biggest, like, you know, the most, there, you know, this has been something that's been theorized for a while, is that Luffy is either the reincarnation of Joy Boy, or he is Joy Boy, or that was sent into the future or something, or he, I don't know, or that he has inherited Joy Boy's fruit, or inherited Joy Boy's will somehow, maybe through the fruit or something. It's hard to say exactly what this all means, right? We don't know yet. We don't have enough information. That being said, there's been like, you know, we saw the straw hat up in, you know, the fucking frozen in carbonite in, you know, Eames' little cellar. We saw, you know, there's been a lot of moments where like, you know, the sun god Nika, the sun god Nika. Oh yeah, Nika. Okay. So Nika has actually been mentioned before. Joy Boy and Nika, I guess, are the same. That's not too surprising, but it is interesting. I assumed that there was some similarities there, but I wasn't 100% sure. I assumed they were at least from like the same era, you know, that there were like two people in that era who were both like legends in their own right. But now getting confirmation that they're the same, that's interesting, I guess. Okay, but like, all right, let's talk about this for a sec, because this has some massive implications. So, is Luffy the chosen one? And is that a bad thing? Are the two questions that immediately come to mind. It depends, right? We don't know enough about what Joy Boy is, or what the connotation behind Joy Boy is, to fully be like, oh yeah, he's the chosen one. That being said, Joy Boy apparently left the One Piece, like left whatever is One Piece on Raftel or Laugh-Tale. Joy Boy wrote many of the poneglyphs, or at very least, you know, was the one who delivered the messages that were, you know, that ended up being on the poneglyphs and put throughout the world. Joy Boy had a pact with the Fishman people, apparently meant to bring them to the surface, but failed to do so before his time was up. And there's this idea, like, you know, and what's his name? Odin and Roger kind of implied, like, in 20 years' time, like, that's when, like, you know, Joy Boy will reappear, or Joy Boy will appear again. So, like, it's been hard to determine exactly what they're building to with this, right? Because there's definitely an element of, like, Joy Boy being a, like, not necessarily a reincarnation, but potentially, like, I don't know, it's tough to say, because, like, Joy Boy clearly existed in the past, but we also know that there's someone with a time devil fruit, so what does that mean? You know, like, obviously we know that apparently Toki Toki can only send people forward in time, but what if a previous user of the fruit, or a user since, like, let's say maybe Hiyori inherited the Toki Toki fruit, and she can send people back in time. I don't know. Who knows? You know, the awakened version of the Toki Toki fruit is to send someone back in time, a la, you know, Samurai Jack. So who knows, man? Okay, so there's a lot to say about this. I'm going to read a couple comments. Sour says, it does seem a bit counter to One Piece's themes of personal freedom and choosing your own destiny. Yeah, a little bit. Like, we have to see how it plays out. I don't want to get, like, too down on this yet, because, like a lot of us saw this coming. Like, honestly, I was coping so hard that Momo would be Joy Boy, because there had been some build up to that as well. Like, what was it? It was, like, the fact that Momo, here's the voice of all things, Momo can command Zunisha, you know, just like, you know, which was, Zunisha was like Joy Boy's companion, so that's a huge thing right then and there. Luffy could hear Zunisha, but Momo could command Zunisha and give, you know, tell Zunisha what to do. Then there was also, like, moments in this arc where Yamato said, like, you absolutely must survive this battle. The future of Wano and the rest of the world, like, is, you know, on, like, weighs on you. It depends on you. And then Momo reads Odin's logbook and finds out, like, oh, I absolutely cannot allow myself to die. So it's like, there are things that were kind of being built up to, like, maybe they're gonna, like, make Luffy just a normal guy who just, you know, has been, like, getting stronger over time, and maybe Momo is the chosen one. I would have preferred that personally, but it all depends on how this is done, right? Like, I see Luffy, he's smiling, he looks like the fucking Joy Boy cartoon from Joy Boy Theory's YouTube channel, which is cringe as all hell. I bet that guy is fucking, you know, creaming his jeans over this, because he fucking predicted Joy Boy's relevance ages ago. Oh, that's so cringe. But that being said, look, I want to see, like, what's going to happen next chapter? Is Luffy getting back up? Are we getting a Joy Boy flashback? Are we ever going to get a Rocks flashback at this point? At this point, I'm like, probably not, right? Like, I don't know. And this guy, like, word of God, like this man, this mammoth boy, this, Zunisha. Zunisha knew Joy Boy in the past. So, like, when Zunisha says, I sense the presence of my old friend Joy Boy, I don't know what to make of this. Like, obviously, there is an element of, like, reincarnation cycles, like, are a thing that come up in Japanese media from time to time. It is just possible that that's what this is implying. It's also possible that this is just related to the Gum Gum fruit in particular, and that, like, maybe for, like, after Joy Boy's death initially, the Gum Gum fruit has just been, that was Joy Boy's fruit, and it had been in, like, some sort of, like, maybe the world government has been protecting it and safeguarding it up until the point where Shanks stole it. And Luffy ended up eating it, and Shanks was just like, that's fine. Okay, whatever. Luffy's cool. He will, and maybe, like, it depends on how this is done, right? So Sour says, but this realistically has been a long time coming. Yes, it has been built up. It's not coming out of nowhere. I will say, it depends on how they do it. If Luffy's entire personality is a result of the fact that he is a reincarnation of somebody else, that will be bad, and I will call that shit out, and that will be awful. But if it's just that Luffy already was someone who, like, from his time as a child, already had, like, the mindset necessary, if Luffy's personality is not what's inherited, like, obviously he's inherited the will of guys like Shanks and guys like Ace, but if Luffy's personality and, like, his good-heartedness and the ways in which he impacts the world, because he impacts the world through his generosity, his fun-loving nature, his whimsy, but also his willingness to, like, put his foot down when someone is infringing on the freedoms of someone that he respects. Whenever Luffy sees someone else's freedoms being taken away, especially when it's someone who he respects, he's like, I am going to stand up for them because I am strong and they are weak, and I will be the one who does the thing. And maybe that's the way Joy Boy in the past was as well, but at very least, like, we know that, like, generations can pass. Like, looking back at, like, Skypiea, for instance, right? So Skypiea is an arc where we see that the will of people like Mont Blanc, Nolans, and Calgara has been inherited by their descendants. Now, obviously, those are direct descendants. They have, like, reasons to actually care about their ancestors because it affects their lives today. So it's a little bit different from someone like Luffy, who probably hasn't even heard of Joy Boy before he was, like, brought up. I mean, has Luffy even ever heard of Joy Boy? I don't even know. Probably not. Like, so that's the thing. Is, like, it's a little different with Cricket inheriting Nolan's will, and Calgara as well being inherited by the Shandian, specifically Wiper, right? So those guys, like, their entire lives, their entire, like, current living situation has been affected by this schism that happened back during their ancestors' time. But we still see that, like, 400 years later or something, because that was, like, 400 years ago that happened. Something like that. At least 200 years ago, I think, was the Nolan Calgara flashback, if I'm not mistaken. It was a long time ago. Like, the furthest flashback back that we've seen, I'm pretty sure. But we've seen how, like, generations, like, you can still inherit the will, like, and inherit the will, quote unquote. What does inherited will mean? It's basically like the will the thing that someone else wanted to accomplish in the past, whether, it's inspired someone to take up the mantle, right? That's essentially what inherited will is. Now, if Luffy is, like, basically just, like, has a similar, demeanor and, like, similar goals to someone like Joy Boy, like, they have similar sensibilities, that won't be enough for me to assume, like, but it's never, like, Otis never says, like, no, his personality is still all its own. Like, Oda might not spell that out specifically, but as long as he makes it clear that Joy Boy is not, like Luffy is not actually a reincarnation of Joy, or, like, not in the sense that, like, as long as Luffy's personality is his own, as long as Luffy's sensibilities are his own, even if they mirror Joy Boy's in some way, even if there is, like, some connection there, like, they both, don't get, like, they both, like, will stand up, for people's freedoms when it matters. They are both, like, maybe fun-loving guys. I don't want them to be too similar. If we do see a Joy Boy flashback, whether it be this arc or in Raftel, I want it to be, or Laugh-Tale, I just like calling it Raftel, it sounds cooler. I want it to be something where Luffy, like, Luffy's like, oh, well, I don't give a fuck about what that guy back then wanted. I just, like, want what I want now, If Oda makes the distinction, and the main thing that Luffy has inherited from Joy Boy is these powers, I will be more okay with that. Let's see what our comments have to say. Yo, what if it's the mind of Joy Boy trying to take over Luffy's, but Luffy says no, and they have to coexist? Oh, so like kind of like a Cavendish type of thing. Cavendish and his weird alter ego. That could be kind of fun. Like, because the Cavendish thing is really fun. So like, if Luffy does something like that, that could be kind of fun. I could see Luffy like kind of almost like a hollow Ichigo from Bleach type of thing. Like that can be a fun dynamic. Like, cause like even with Hollow Ichigo like tore off his mask, was like, get the fuck out of here. Like, you have to pay rent if you want to take over my body, stuff like that. And then Sour also says, kind of like the dynamic of Naruto and Kurama. Yeah, listen, if Oda wanted to explore that dynamic, like the Hollow Ichigo dynamic or the Kurama Naruto dynamic, I think that could be an interesting thing, because like that hasn't really been explored in One Piece. And like Oda always does like he always puts his own twist on stuff like that. So like even with Ninja, like Raizo being such like a weird and dinosaurs like having like the ancient power of the pterodon, getting to pull your fucking head back and shoot it at someone, right? Stuff like that is really fun, and I like when Oda kind of like takes a popular thing in media and like kind of twists it, whether it be in Japanese or Western media, and kind of like twists it and like kind of does his own fun thing with it. So like if that's what he goes for, like let's say Joy Boy is like this kind of like demon that lives in Luffy, for instance, and Luffy's just like, yeah, fuck off. Or Luffy like only listens to him, and like then they have like a little arc where like they kind of learn to work together, and like Luffy can only use his powers when they are working in tandem, and like there is kind of like an internal struggle there. That could be cool. I would actually, like, that would be fine. I would actually be kind of into that, because that would draw a clear distinction between Luffy and Joy Boy. That being said, we need to quickly discuss, I don't want to go too long, because I've already, how long is the stream been? I don't even know. It's about an hour. Okay, we're good. We're actually fine. But, okay, so we have to discuss something. So, let's say, hypothetically, Luffy ate the gum fruit. The gum fruit is clearly more important, and it has been made to be more important than it initially was. It has been, it was always a notable fruit, at least a little bit, to some degree, but never like to the extent that we thought there was more to it than when we saw a couple chapters ago. I think it was when we found out, like from Who's Who, that the government was protecting that fruit. They were transporting it. Shanks is the one who stole it. And then also later on when the government was like, that fruit hasn't awakened in centuries, and now we're finding out what that means. Some people thought it was Zunisha, now we're learning it's the gum, right? So, okay, so with this, what exactly does seeing Luffy's fruit turn into like a weird Jello fruit? What does this mean, right? So, right off the bat, like if Luffy, like let's say hypothetically that you're right, Sour, and that this is like Joy Boy's personality, because like Luffy's dead, so Joy Boy comes back to life. Joy Boy revives him by like taking over his body, a la Kurama or the nine-tailed fox from Naruto. What does that mean? So like we know that the swords because we've learned a lot about like various different power systems have been more fleshed out and more explained this arc. Some things for better and some things for worse. But like look at like Enma, for instance. Enma, the sword, and like many different swords in this world kind of like contain the spirit of their previous owners, or the one who made them. Like the way they were made, who they were made by, and like who wielded them in the past, and turned like, for instance, Shusoi being a black blade is because what's his name? The guy, the samurai man from long ago, from Wanted. Oh god, I forget his name. You guys know who I'm talking about. He was a zombie on Thriller Bark. Zoro sliced him in half, whatever. That guy. I can't remember his name right now. We saw that, his sword is a black blade, and that, like, what we learned is that when a blade has been made permanently black, it's been infused with the spirit, the haki of their former owner, their master, right? And so it kind of like lives on in them. And like I remember back when Zoro was fighting King, he had been knocked down. He was holding Enma in one hand, and Enma only went crazy the moment Hiyori showed up. Like, so we saw literally Hiyori in one panel where she's talking to, and I remember this back in that chapter. Hiyori was she first appeared in the arc talking to, what's his name? Oh god, Orochi. She was talking to Orochi, She shows up, and then literally the next page, Enma's like, huh? Like, it's like almost like a huh? And then like Enma started going crazy, and Zoro's like, what the fuck? And I remember thinking like, oh, if Enma is infused with the spirit of Odin, of course it would react to his daughter being on the island, right? You know, being there and being still alive, right? So that's, and I think there is an element, like this has been something that's been talked about a lot in this arc, that like inanimate objects can be infused with the spirit, the haki of others, right? Like, and like, you know, we saw the samurai using Odin's Ryo. Obviously, that's a little bit different. That's inherited will, but it's turning inherited will into a mechanic is what it's doing. It's like we have the same will as Odin to defeat you and set Wano free and break down Wano's borders and, you know, relinquish your control over it. That's why they were able to, you know, their will, their, you know, carrying Odin's will forward, being his blades, literally, is what allowed them to potentially, you know, that in their own strength is what allowed them to damage Kaido, right? So if, like, let's say Luffy, Joy Boy from the past, from 800 years ago, inherited the will, or like not inherited the will. Let's say Joy Boy from the past had the Gum Gum fruit, he awakened it, and let's say, hypothetically, through his, you know, will being passed on, like when he died, the fruit that existed within him, kind of like, you know, when it went and grew on another thing, like it fused with his spirit. And now, let's say, hypothetically, Joy Boy's spirit is, you know, infused with the Gumu Gumu, but it was dormant because the fruit hadn't been awakened in 800 years or whatever, and it's finally awakened. I actually wouldn't hate that as an explanation, as long as, like, Oda, you know, makes it clear that there's a distinguishment between Joy Boy from the past and what we're getting in the present, and, like, who Luffy is. As long as, like, Luffy literally isn't just a carbon copy of Joy Boy, and, like, Luffy's personality is his own, and his ingenuity is his own, and his, you know, like, the things that make Luffy fun and unique and, like, a good character are still his own. And as long as Oda draws a line there and makes that clear, I can accept whatever is going to come from this, as long as it's not too bullshit. This is already, like, teetering into bullshit mode, but I think as long as Oda draws that line, I think that's, like, that is the way that he can make this not super bad. That's how I feel. Okay, so let's read some comments. Kev D. Weeb says, I just want Luffy to be forced into this prophecy nonsense and say, no, I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I want to do and be whoever I want to be, because that's what I want. Fuck yeah, dude, that's what I want too. See, that's why I like Sour's example from before, and he's saying that, like, maybe, like, and I actually think this could kind of work with what I proposed, that, like, maybe, you know, similar to how swords can be infused with the haki or the spirit of their former masters, perhaps it can be a thing with devil fruits as well. That wouldn't be too far-fetched of an explanation, in my opinion, based on what's been explained and kind of, you know, clearly been slowly built up this arc, especially with, like, the Black Blades and stuff like that, and Enma as well. I would actually, like, as an explanation, I would be all right with that. But then if it was like, if it did end up being like sort of like a nine-tailed fox dynamic where, like, Luffy has this, like, other spirit inhabiting him that, like, can take over him, but, like, Luffy just, like, at some point, like, maybe, like, Joy Boy takes over Luffy for a little bit, beats up on Kaido, and then Luffy at some point is just, like, pulls like an Ichigo in what's it called, in Bleach, where Ichigo gets taken over by the Hollow Mask, and then Ichigo just, like, he just, like, rips off the Hollow Mask and he's like, sorry about that. Like, I would be perfectly fine with, like, there actually being, like, a legitimate conflict between Joy Boy and what Joy Boy wants and Luffy and what Luffy wants. If Oda establishes that, I would be fine with that, and I'd actually be interested in seeing Oda explore that type of dynamic, because that's a popular dynamic in Shonen. It happens in, obviously, Bleach, Naruto, two of the other big three. It happens in, Jujutsu Kaisen. It happens in, like, even My Hero Academia has, like, you know, he has, like, spirits living inside of him. It's a common trope in, like, Japanese, like, popular Japanese shonen stories. So, like, I actually kind of would be interested to see Oda's take on that. Like, the more I think about that as, like, what Oda's going for, the less I hate this idea. But it has to be, like, a thing, like you said, where there is a conflict between what Joy Boy wants and what Luffy wants. And that doesn't mean that eventually they can't, like, come together and, like, reconcile their differences and work together. And maybe that's a thing. Maybe, like, when Joy Boy's in control, and Luffy can just be, like, you know, eventually can just, like, kick him out, similar to what happens in Jujutsu Kaisen or what's it called? Naruto, where Naruto's just like, I don't want you taking over my body, Fox, get the fuck out of here, you know? If the same thing happens with Luffy, where like maybe at first Joy Boy takes over and he's like overpowered, and like, but then like Luffy can only use the awakened powers when he works together with Joy Boy. So that would keep Luffy from being like too overpowered right away. There's still like an extra power that he can tap into if he, you know, gets knocked out or something. But then it would make it an arc where Luffy has to eventually him and Joy Boy and him have to like Joy Boy and Luffy have to come together, and like Joy Boy has to convince Luffy to help. Maybe, you know, after hearing more from Joy Boy or something, like that could be interesting. I do like the idea though of them first being a contentious relationship for a long time, maybe until after Luffy goes to Raftel and learns like more about what's going on, and you know, maybe at that point, like, or like maybe some way Luffy gets more invested in the conflict with the world government at some point. It's hard to say exactly how that would happen, but that could be something that happens. Something has to draw these two together. But as long as there is conflict at first between Joy Boy and Luffy, even like as long as Oda draws a distinction between the two, I think that could still be good. There's a lot of ways to make this bad. I think that is one way to make it good. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so Kev D. Weeb also says anything along those lines. Sour says, the fruit inheriting the will makes so much sense. Yeah, that makes so much sense, right? Like that has been built up with the swords. We haven't seen it with fruit yet, but like I don't think that is a huge extension. Like to me, that would be acceptable. Like I would find that an acceptable explanation. And I kind of, now that like you've proposed that idea, Sour, now that I've kind of like fleshed it out a little bit in my head, I think that's kind of what I'm hoping Oda goes with. Obviously, we'll see what Oda ends up doing, but I do like the idea of like a Kurama Naruto or like a, you know, like an Ichiko, Hollow Ichiko, like dynamic between Luffy and Joy Boy. Like I think that could actually be really fun, especially because Luffy he's such a different character from Naruto and Ichiko. Like I could see that really being like a fun dynamic where like Joy Boy's like, we have to be serious and take down the world government, and Luffy's just like, fuck that. Like that could be really funny. You know, that would be a really fun dynamic. I would love to see that. So now that we know we're going in this direction, I'm really hoping that Oda does draw like a solid distinction between these two entities, Joy Boy and Luffy. Even if Joy Boy exists within Luffy, I hope that Luffy retains, like Luffy's such a strong personality. I want to see that maintained, retained, and I want to see that still be his own, and that he hasn't inherited all of his personality traits from Joy Boy. Doesn't mean they can't work together. It doesn't mean they can't come to a like common ground and become like, you know, and work in tandem, even if they're in the same body. I just want to see that distinction be made clear, and I'm hoping Oda goes that way, but we'll see. Okay. Let's see. Kev D. Weeb says, that's a fine dynamic, but I hate that we have to discuss and hope for these lesser evils. You see, I get what you're saying, dude. Like, obviously, like, this isn't the way... Like, One Piece hasn't been that type of series. It has drawn a distinction between... itself and stuff like a lot of other shonen, because it hasn't really focused on that like kind of like internal conflict type of stuff as much with especially not with Luffy, right? Like Luffy does occasionally have conflicts, but it's usually about like how things relate to his crew and the world around him. It's usually about him accepting like hard truths about himself, about how like who he is as a leader, about like, you know, things he might not be able to do on his own. Like that's the type of stuff like Luffy grapples with, is like, oh, maybe I'm being a bad captain right now, or maybe you know, I could have done this better, or maybe I shouldn't have been so hard on Usopp, or like, you know, maybe, you know, this or that. Like, there are things that Luffy contends with usually, but usually Luffy's kind of like the moral center of the series. He's usually the one who puts everyone else straight. So having him be in a dynamic where he's like at odds with himself could be weird, but I don't necessarily, the more I think about it, the more excited I get about it, because I like those dynamics in those other shonens, right? Like, I like Naruto's dynamic with the fox. I like Ichigo's dynamic with his inner hollow. I like, it adds a lot of layers to those characters, and like, say what you want about those series, but like those are some of like the best dynamics and best parts of those series in my opinion. Like having that kind of like internal conflict be actually an internal conflict within yourself, like manifested, I think is really interesting, and I would be very curious to see how Oda would do that with Luffy, especially as we get towards the end of the series. So I'm less, the more I've thought about it, just like talking with you guys now, because at first I was really down on this. The moment I saw this, I'm like, oh God, what is Oda doing? What is he going to do? But the more I've thought about this, the less I hate that idea. And as long as Oda takes it in that, or somewhere along that direction, I think I can actually like I think there's some potential there. I think there's some potential there for like Oda to, because what Oda does is he does what other shonens do, like way later and like in some ways way better. Like Luffy only had his first like on-screen training arc in Wano, and it was cool as hell because like he didn't need one in pre-time skip. Like it just wasn't that kind of series. So like Oda's been integrating stuff like in Whole Cake Island and in the back half of the series that other shonens have been doing forever. And he's just like, oh yeah, well we didn't need to do that until now, but now we're doing it because we have to like overcome these like huge obstacles. And it's interesting. It's interesting to see Oda's take on like classic shonen tropes that he has actually avoided for so long. I really like that. So I'm kind of interested. My interest has been piqued for this type of like a dynamic between Luffy and maybe the spirit of Joy Boy or something. We'll see. It could be done poorly. Obviously, like I'll, and if it is, I'll call it out. But we'll just have to see. There's too much left open with this. I don't know enough. We haven't seen enough of what he's doing with this for me to like condemn it yet. But like there are obvious concerns, but there are also things that at least in my opinion, could be interesting and could be cool. And it just depends on how Oda executes. So we'll just have to wait and see. Okay. Kev D. Weave also says, guess we just gotta trust Oda. Yeah, I mean, this is the fucking dilemma of being a weekly One Piece reader, is like, we're just kind of like, oh god, is Oda gonna fuck everything up? I mean, I really hope not, bro. I trust Oda to some degree. I don't necessarily trust him with everything, but I am cautiously optimistic that this won't be as bad. Like the whole Luffy being Joy Boy thing might be more interesting than I initially thought it was. Luffy has to retain his personhood, his individuality, like who he is. It can't be just that he was, that his whole being, that the person he is just because he, inherited this fruit or inherited the will of Joy Boy. Like, there's got to be a distinction between the two. And as long as Oda defines that distinction in a way that I think is interesting and explores Luffy's character more, explores maybe Joy Boy's character a little bit, that I think could be acceptable and interesting. And I would welcome that if it's done well, and that's going to be, whether it's done well or not is going to be somewhat subjective. We just kind of have to wait and see, and take it each on our own terms a little bit with that. Okay, Sour says, if the fruit thing happens, Reborn is going to have a field day with the Haki fruit. Yeah, dude. Dude, that would be really funny. I mean, like, I'm seeing this gum fruit right now, and what's funny is back when the Gorosei were talking about this fruit, now we know is the gum fruit, they were saying, why would they give this fruit a different name? What if it literally could be the Haki fruit. It literally could be that. They could just reveal, like, it's the Haki fruit. It's been the Haki fruit the whole time. What I'm guessing is it's more like some sort of what I would guess based on what we're seeing now, he's turning into like a Jello man, right? Like he's like, his hair is going all gelatin. I'm guessing he might have powers maybe more similar to Katakuri. Like in that he's stretchy, but he's also like more malleable. Like it's less rubber, because like rubber like kind of snaps back to place, right? I could see it being more like he can move and reshape his body parts. He's just like a fucking, like a Ditto, basically, like from a Pokemon, where it's just like that thing is just like a blob that can be turned into any shape it wants. And I think that could be kind of interesting. Like, I obviously don't want it to be like the Haki fruit, because that would be stupid, but I mean, it would be pretty funny. For the meme, it would be funny. But I mean, I hope it's something where it's like, it still maintains the general vibe of Luffy's silly, goofy powers. And I'm, like I've said before, based on this theory that we have that maybe Luffy is going to have sort of like a Naruto Nine-Tailed Fox sort of relationship with Joy Boy, potentially. Obviously, that's just a theory. I could see this power only be something he can access when he lets Joy Boy take over, or when they're working as one, when their wills align, right? So we'll just have to see. Like, I don't want it to be something he can just access at all times, personally, because this guy Luffy was already like, giving Kaido a run for his money, just like with his own power. So I don't know. I don't want it to go too far, but we'll just have to see. Who knows? Okay, so Sour says, Oda scarcely fails to deliver. I agree. Oda will fuck like little things up, but typically like he gets the big things right. Like his like Oda's like if you look at like, you know, you zoom in, we read the stuff week to week, you zoom in on like the little things, because that's what we do. We're having fun, we're discussing it, we're trying to predict what's going to happen. You know, we're trying to talk about the themes before the arc's over, which is tough, you know, because it's not all there. The information is not all present, right? But usually when you read an arc back, even if it's an arc that you didn't love while you were reading it, in my opinion, there's no bad arc in One Piece. Even like the worst arcs, like especially when you're reading them week to week, and they might seem way worse at the time because you don't know where they're going, they almost always come full circle in a way that is resonant and interesting. And even if there were like missteps along the way, or things that didn't work along the way, or things that kind of undercut like the narrative, what's it called? The narrative, oh, sorry. Sorry. Why do they have this horrible art at the end of these chapters, man? What the fuck? Kaido looks like a fucking, he looks like he's been drawn in like the style of like fucking, I don't know. And Luffy, God, what the hell, dude? This is at the end of all these chapters. Maybe it's okay. But then they have these colored in pages that look pretty good. So it's like the artist who colors this shit is great. The artist who just fucking does his own interpretation of them. It's not, I mean, it's better than what I could do, but it's still not great. Kaido's just standing there like fucking like Jedi, like oh, it looks so bad, dude. Anyway, but yeah, no, like you said, Oda scarcely fails to deliver, so it's always best to wait for the end result before deciding with One Piece. Yeah, I agree, dude. Like, you know, at the end of the day, like, I'm an invested reader in One Piece. Oda's gonna have to work really hard to get me to stop reading, you know. Like, I've quit a few manga. I quit Bleach, like, I think right before the 1,000-Year Blood War arc ended. I ended up going back and reading it later, but at the time I was kind of like, I'm burnt out. This arc isn't going the way I wanted it to, so I'm just gonna stop. Same with Fairy Tail, like I just never finished it because the last arc kind of jumped the shark a little bit too hard even for Fairy Tail. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like Oda has so much goodwill with me. He always brings things full circle. The arcs always end in some satisfying way that, like, you know, ties the themes, the ideas, the character arcs together. Like, he's gonna have to work really hard to make me quit reading this. I'm in it for the long haul. I'm going along with the ride. And regardless of how kind of maybe prophecy piece this might seem, there are interesting things Oda can do with it that would that he hasn't explored before in One Piece. And like, I think that's what I'm really liking about post time skip One Piece, is that Oda specifically is like doing, like, he pre-time skip was kind of like, and I think this might be why a lot of people prefer pre-time skip to post-time skip, is that it has a lot of stuff that like other series don't have. Like the adventure aspects feel really pretty unique to One Piece. Like the way the arcs are structured, although it's like clearly like, you know, not like super revolutionary, they do tend to like just be like really masterfully like structured arcs for basically the whole pre-time skip, maybe minus like one or two here, you know, or one or two there, like early on, and then like kind of like the buggy arc, or not the buggy arc, the what's it called, the Foxy arc. But I mean, I love all of my One Piece arc children, right? Like, you know, I you know, even though I have my favorites, I think they're all fun, and they're always fun on a reread. But yeah, like for me, it's one of those things where I think, you know, we're gonna have to wait and see what Oda does. But I like one of the things I really like post time skip is that Oda's been doing things that like are commonly done in other series. Like in Dressrosa, he did like the battle royale, like that was essentially like a shonen tournament arc type of thing in the Coliseum. And you know, in Whole Cake Island, he had Luffy like kind of, you know, be handily beaten by his opponent, but then kind of like be like, no, I'm gonna have to like overcome him by fighting him. Like I gotta get stronger during the fight, like, and train, and like, you know, and that was like the first time Luffy really did something like that, like a kind of like a mid-battle training arc. That's something we hadn't really seen since Zoro with Mr. One. So like Oda doesn't, these are things that happen a lot in other shonen, but Oda only really pulls them out like characters like exceeding their limits. That doesn't happen that often in One Piece. A lot of times in One Piece, Luffy will fight someone who is handily weaker than him, or like the Straw Hats will fight characters who like they'll be handicapped in some ways, but they'll still like handily defeat them, right? I think like Oda has been like kind of leaning into some more like more common shonen tropes post time skip, but he's doing like an interesting job of like kind of, you know, doing his own thing with them. Like Luffy having a training arc for the first time in the series in Wano is really cool, and like it was really interesting to see how like Oda, you know, portrayed that type of thing. And like it makes sense because Luffy's just been really capable for most of the series, and most of his training and most of him has been off screen, and most of the time he powers up by using his powers in new and interesting ways. So him just like actually like gritting down like in the past in Whole Cake and then here in Wano, and like just being like, no, I actually just have to improve and get stronger on the fly. I have all the you know, grounds have been laid. I've trained in this stuff. Now I just have to figure it out. And like and like with Katakuri, it took like a day. And with the armament hockey stuff, it took like a couple weeks. But like, you know, I like that Oda's like, when Luffy puts his mind to it, like when he actually like trains, puts his nose to the grindstone, like a normal shonen protagonist does, he is gonna get the job done. And that's cool. I like to see that. And like I like that Oda has taken that approach with Luffy, who was kind of like a cocky guy pre-time skip. He was just a guy who thought he could do everything on his own strength. And it was only when he couldn't save Ace at Marineford, and he was just so blown away by the overwhelming power of his adversaries at Marineford, that he realized like, oh, I actually am weak. Like that was Luffy's realization at Marineford, the low point of the series, like, or after Marineford when him and Jinbei are on Amazon Lily. He grabs his head, yells up at the sky, and he's like, I wanted to be Pirate King? Who am I kidding? I'm weak. You know, he yells it into the sky, and he's like, he hadn't even realized, because Oda, like, Luffy doesn't read the newspaper. He left his island at the beginning of the series thinking, I'm strong enough to be the Pirate King right the fuck now. I'm going to be Pirate King. I'm going to beat everyone. He didn't know the relative strength of everyone else in the world. And, like, he only started getting, like, realizing slowly that he wasn't the top dog when he started going up against guys like Crocodile, who, you know, he had to like finally get serious. Like he fought Crocodile a few times because Crocodile's a tricky guy, and it's only when he got serious, like Crocodile was his first like opponent that really pushed him. And then with Aokiji, he's like, okay, to beat guys like Aokiji, I need to find like new creative ways to use my powers. And same with CP9. He's like, I can't beat them just on like being like my goofy, clever self alone. I gotta like start, you know, being more creative and finding creative ways to use my abilities. But like Luffy didn't really train growing up. Like Luffy was just thrown into a forest and like just lived in the jungle and was just like a wild boy. Like he didn't train, he just like fought wild animals like a wild animal does, you know, living in the woods. He didn't see that as training. When he only actively got to training in like the time skip with Rayleigh, and then since the time skip he's realized like, no, in order to protect my crew and become strong, because I'm not strong right now. I finally learned that at Marineford. I've learned that I'm not strong, I'm weak. But to become strong, I have to put the work in, I have to train. Like that's like Luffy's distilled shonen character arc, essentially. Like him realizing like, I am A, not strong enough on my own, and B, I am, you know, like I am weak without my crew, but I'm also like, if I'm weak, I have to make up for that so that I can protect my crew. I have to become the strongest, right? So like, you know, I like that Oda's kind of taken the long haul with Luffy's character arc. Normally this type of stuff, this type of realization that I am weak happens way earlier in like literally every shonen. Like Naruto, when did this happen? It must have happened like, I guess when Sasuke, like maybe beginning of Shippuden, when Sasuke beat him, you know, at the end of Naruto. And like in Bleach, it was like when like chapter like 30, when fucking Byakuya cut him like, in the fucking, you know, beat him up and took Rukia back. And he's like, that's when those characters realized that they're weak. Luffy didn't get to that point until the fucking halfway point of the series. So like Oda has taken this long, drawn-out approach to Luffy's character, and I think that's why I'm not as pessimistic now that we've kind of talked through what a relationship between like Luffy and Joy Boy could potentially look like, with Joy Boy maybe being an inhabiting spirit in the Gomu Gomu that kind of can take over his body at certain times, a la Kurama or a la Hollow Ichigo. I think that could be a really interesting dynamic and a really interesting way to further explore Luffy's character, while also exploring the past as well, and giving Luffy a direct line a direct communication to things that happened 800 years ago, which would automatically, because I didn't see Luffy sitting down and really giving a fuck about like the poneglyph when they get to, you know, Raftel or whatever, but I could see him actually getting more invested if it's like someone who from back then inside of him, like him becoming close to someone like that and like learning their plight, similar to what happened with Momo and similar to what happened with Tama. Luffy connects with people. He doesn't necessarily connect with like stories. He likes legends of heroes, like he liked the Legend of Odin, he liked Nolan's, but like he does not like care about history. He cares about characters and like icons and like people of renown that like inspire him, and because he's a guy who, like he cares about stuff like that. Like if someone is inspiring and cool, he's like, oh yeah, I like that guy. Or like if someone, you know, he identifies with people on a personal level. So this could actually be a great vehicle for getting Luffy invested in the whole situation with the world government and their conflict with the D-Clan 800 years ago, and like what happened back then, and getting to Raftel, learning the truth, having maybe this next arc be about like Luffy's like partially at least about Luffy's conflict with Joy Boy, and then having that reconcile with like them learning to trust each other and work together to either take down the world government or defeat, you know, Blackbeard or whatever that might be. I think that could be really, really, really interesting. And the more I think about it, the more excited I am to see that. Obviously, Oda might just be like, no, actually, Luffy just is Joy Boy now. That's the, you know, they have the same personality. They were always the same guy. And if Oda goes that direction, that would suck. But, you know, we'd have to see what he'd do with it. But that would suck. I mean, we'll just have to see. I can't pass too much judgment yet. And Sour says, okay, but Fairy Tail sucks, so you're validated. Yeah, I agree. Fairy Tail has good moments. It had potential. That's why people liked it first. It had potential. It just squandered that potential. Still better than Jujutsu Kaisen, though. Jujutsu Kaisen outright sucks. Okay, Sour says, see my Twitter review for details. I'll check it out in a little bit, Sour. And then last comment, I think, for the night is Sour says, like he trained, quote-unquote, sometimes as a boy fighting Ace and Sabo and getting punched by Garp. Yeah, that's the thing. He trained in the sense that, like, the only training he did was he's like, I'm just going to run at this until I learn how to beat it. Like, he wasn't like outside of just like using his powers and learning to use his powers in creative ways and learning to adapt to his environment of being in a jungle and running around like literal wild animals and having to like defend himself with his bros. Like, that's how Luffy trained. He was thrown into the deep end of a swimming pool and had to learn how to swim. And like, that was his training. He wasn't like Zoro, where Zoro had to learn like technique. Like, Luffy has techniques, but he developed them from like being able to be adaptive, right? That's what I'm talking about. He didn't really actively start like training until like right before the time skip, when Rayleigh's like, you gotta train to be the strongest. And he's like, well, I'm weak. You know, I didn't think I was weak before, but I know I'm weak now, so I have to train to be the strongest. So like, you know, Luffy's character arc is very subtle because it's spread out over 1,000 chapters, but it is there, and it's very, very shonen core. Like, it literally is just like, guy wants to be king of the pirates, thinks he can do it on his own strength at first, learns that he is not, you know, basically not that guy. You know, he gets to the war, and it's that meme of like, man, you're not that guy. You're not that guy, basically. He gets to the Paramount War, he's like, oh, okay, I'm not that guy. And Rayleigh's like, well, what if I told you could become that guy? And he's like, I gotta become that guy to keep my family together. Like, that's been, you know, his goal ever since then, is to be that guy, to keep his family together, but also rely on them because he knows he can't do it alone. So that's like his little thing. So Luffy was a very simple character up to now. It just doesn't feel right that Luffy, a character that always spoke what he was thinking and didn't have a thought bubble up to Impel Down, I believe. I don't even think he had a thought bubble in Impel Down. He spoke out loud. Like, his thought bubble is literally him whispering to himself, if anything. Like, it's not like, you know, we don't hear Luffy's thoughts. He's a man of action. I would now have this internal conflict where he has to balance that, what he wants, with his other consciousness inside him. See, here's the thing. I don't see it manifesting in Luffy somehow now having like internal dialogue. I mostly see it in Luffy like having to like occasionally like hear Joy Boy like nagging at him, and him mostly just like kind of like picking his nose and being like, huh? You know, like, I see it mostly being that way, and then Luffy occasionally being like, listen, dude, like, I don't know you anything. And then eventually, like, after he learns about like the true history and kind of almost maybe more like getting like a personal connection with the spirit of Joy Boy, at that point it could get him invested in Joy Boy's plight, and then they might work together. I think that could be an interesting way to, I don't see it being like I don't see Luffy changing very much, but like Luffy, the reason he helps anyone is because he connects with someone on a personal level. It happened in Dressrosa. He connected with, what's her name? Bikini bitch in the Coliseum. I forget her name. It happens with basically like every island he goes to, right? Like he connects with somebody on a personal level, and that's what makes him help. Like with Kobe, he wasn't gonna help Kobe. He's like, Kobe, you're a little bitch. You're just working for someone you don't like. Follow your dreams, dude. And it wasn't until Kobe stood up for himself that he's like, okay, now I'll help you. Now I'll help you get out of here. Same with like Usopp. Same with Nami in Arlong Park. Same with like Sanji and all those guys. And it always happens. Like Luffy has to connect with someone who's on the ground. He has to connect with the personal plight. Like with Koza, not Koza, Koza's dad. Not Koza's dad. The guy who was digging the sand and or digging out the Yuba, the Yuba guy. I forget that guy's name. But like, yeah, he always connects with someone on the ground, like who's having a, whose plight he can identify with, and that's what gets him to help. So if he's ever going to get involved in a world war, I think him being able to connect personally with someone who was there when this stuff began, like Joy Boy, could actually be kind of interesting. We'll see what happens. It could go bad. There's a lot of ways this can go bad. I'm not denying that, Kev D-Weeb. I'm just saying that, like, I think there are some ways that this could be really interesting. And I'm curious to see what Oda does with it, because I like those type of, like, internal conflict dynamics, even when it's just, like, one character. Like, I like, for instance, in Naruto, when Naruto and Kurama are talking, and Kurama's, like, egging him on, and Naruto, and this is, like, in Shippuden, I think, Naruto just like, he's like, I've heard enough of you. And Naruto literally just like drops a bunch of seals on, like he drops a bunch of like fucking like, those like, holy gate things, those things that mark like a holy site, like a bunch of them basically just like staple Kurama to the ground. And then he just steps on Kurama's face and he's like, shut the fuck up. I'm your boss. Like I could just see like Luffy having that type of a relationship with like an inhabiting spirit, and it being kind of funny of like Luffy just like kind of like only listening to what Joy Boy has to say when it's, when he actually cares, but most of the time just being like doing his thing where he has a finger in his nose and he's just like, huh? Like, I think that could be fun. I think that could be a fun dynamic. Obviously we have to wait and see. Who knows? Who knows if Oda's even going to go that direction? He might just make Luffy like a fucking reincarnated guy. I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm trying to find a way that like, I think this turn of events could be good and okay. Obviously we just don't know what Oda's going to do. So, we got to wait and see. Oda has let us down in some small ways, but he hasn't let us down in a big way yet, at least in my opinion. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. We'll just have to see where this goes. It's a little scary, but but Joy Boy is here, and yeah, that's it, guys. That's it. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming out and having a conversation about the chapter with me. It was a lot of fun. This is why I do this, is so that we can like talk about it after it's done. And like I totally, by the way, guys like Kev D-Weeb, like I totally get where you're coming from. I totally get your reservations with this. There is a lot to be freaked out about. There's a lot to be like nervous about with the direction that Oda is clearly going with this Joy Boy stuff. I also feel that way. I want to assure you it's not lost on me. But we got to wait and see. At least that's how I feel. Like there are ways that this could potentially be interesting and good. We just have to wait and see. We just have to wait and see. We'll only, like I said, I think if Oda draws a distinction between Luffy's personality and Joy Boy's, and then maybe does an interesting thing, with that, delineation between their personalities, whether it be like a split personality or inhabiting spirit, or even just that, like, Luffy has Joy Boy's power now, but he doesn't care about Joy Boy's will. That could be an interesting way to do it, I guess. There are ways to make it okay. There are ways to make this acceptable and potentially even good. And yeah, we just gotta see what he does. But again, this was an interesting chapter. It was a scary chapter. It was a fun chapter as well. And I'm curious to see what we get from Oda. Is there a chapter? Oh, break next week. Okay. 2 weeks time. We'll see what he does. Hopefully he doesn't completely destroy the series with this turn of events. But yeah, thanks again, guys, for coming through. It was a good time, and I will see you in 2 weeks for chapter 1044. Have a good one.